Hi, I'm Serene Brooks, and this is the Goal Nutrition and Diabetes Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm a registered dietitian and a certified diabetes care and education specialist, and I love teaching people how and why to make positive lifestyle choices that will help make an impact on their long-term health. I just feel like it's so important to really understand the why behind things so that you are empowered to make those decisions. So, thanks for joining me. Today, we're going to talk about the surprising impact of sleep on blood sugar management and weight. Sleep makes a big impact on both of these things. So, I feel like it's really important to understand that. And I'm going to start off by talking about the impact the sleep has on blood sugar management. So whether you have type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, or you don't have diabetes at all, it still is making an impact on your blood sugars. Having adequate sleep helps improve blood sugar levels. And I'm going to tell you why. And if you are already living with diabetes, you have a pretty good understanding of blood sugar and why it is important to management and manage it, and also some of the difficulties in managing it, how blood sugars kind of go up and down and fluctuate, and how they impact how you feel. So you have an understanding of that. But if you don't have diabetes, sometimes you overlook the fact that it's still important to manage blood sugars. Having high blood sugars over a long period of time can put you at higher risk for developing type 2 diabetes. So, super important for everyone, and it impacts everyone. Now, insulin is a hormone that allows glucose to leave the bloodstream and be used by the cells of the body as fuel. So it's important that we use our insulin efficiently as possible. And one of the things that impacts our ability to utilize our insulin efficiently is having the proper amount of sleep. When we don't get enough sleep, we become resistant to the insulin, and it causes blood sugar levels to rise. Now, someone who has type 1 diabetes, they may experience something called the dawn phenomenon. Even someone with type 2 diabetes may experience this. It impacts people differently, and some more than others, but having a lack of sleep even further escalates this dawn phenomenon, where early in the morning blood sugar levels go a little bit higher. So it's even harder to manage this when we have a lack of sleep. There's also something called our circadian rhythm, and this is our body's internal clock, and it regulates our sleep and wake cycle hormone. The hormones, the body temperature, all these things in our body are happening because of the circadian rhythm. Now, it also plays a role with glucose control. So during sleep, there's changes in hormones such as melatonin, growth hormone, cortisol, and these all influence how our body uses insulin and how it releases glucose from the liver. So when our circadian rhythm is disrupted, these processes become a little bit unbalanced and blood sugar can raise. And if you don't have diabetes, it can also raise your risk for type 2 over time. So the good news is that we can prioritize sleep. We can help improve that circadian rhythm. We can help increase our sensitivity to our insulin and be able to regulate our glucose more efficiently in our body. So super important for blood sugar control. Now, another thing that happens when we don't get enough sleep is we have different hormones that are produced when we sleep well or when we don't sleep well. So, with inadequate sleep, we have an overproduction of the hormone called ghrelin, which is an appetite increasing hormone. So, we're more hungry. Then we also have an underproduction of leptin, which is an appetite suppressing hormone. So we've got this combination of two things that we don't really want when it comes to managing how much we're going to eat. So you can see how that would interfere with our urge to eat and our inability to really recognize fullness because we are going to be more hungry. We have this increased hormone that's making us feel more hungry, a decrease in the hormone that makes us feel full. So, really, that connection between lack of sleep and cravings really is impacted. Now, interestingly, the things that our body starts craving during this time are those processed, high carbohydrate, high sugar type of foods. So, not necessarily the foods we're wanting to increase, but that is how we feel, and that is truly what our body craves. And it's really difficult to control those cravings and control what we eat when we feel more hungry and when we truly are physically craving those foods. So, having appropriate sleep can really help us with making food choices. And we're going to talk here in a minute about how that impacts weight, as you can imagine where we're going with that. But I want to touch a little bit on another hormone that is produced, and that is cortisol. So, when we don't get adequate sleep, our bodies go into this state of chronic stress. And cortisol is a stress hormone. It is part of the response to being in stress for our body. And cortisol and belly fat have a correlation because the high cortisol levels promote fat storage in our belly, and it it signals to our body to store fat in our abdomen. And so that is another physical thing that is happening in our body when we don't get adequate sleep. So that stress hormone, that's the stress, the cortisol also impacts the insulin resistance. When we're in high stress, our body does not respond to the insulin like it normally would. And so that once again will decrease the uptake of the glucose from the bloodstream into the cells of the body to be used for energy. So blood sugar levels go high, but our body isn't getting the energy that it needs. Then also there is an increased production of glucose by the liver, and that is released, which then even makes our blood sugar levels go higher. And then we have less um, insulin that is produced. And so it creates this combination of things that cause blood sugar levels to really go up. And we talked about those hunger hormones, the appetite suppression hormones that are not in line for where we want them to be with lack of sleep. So that is where you can see that it would lead to weight gain. So people who tend to not get adequate sleep also struggle with weight loss. And that is why there's a physical reason why it's happening. Um, we are more hungry and it's hard to recognize when we're full. But another thing that happens is with sleep deprivation, it can really significantly impact our metabolism. Our metabolism slows way down when we have not had enough sleep. So we are not burning the calories like we normally would if we were getting adequate sleep. So, because of all of these things put together over time, with the increased hunger, increased calorie intake, slower metabolism, people tend to gain weight. And so prioritizing sleep becomes so important because some of these things are happening in our body with lack of sleep that we really cannot control. And it's hard to make a big impact on them ourselves because we are hungry and we are eating more and our metabolism is slowed down. So being breasted is a really powerful tool for burning fat, regulating hunger, and just maintaining long-term weight management, getting that sleep. Now, another thing to keep in mind with sleep is just that energy that we have when we have a good night's rest. it makes a profound impact on our energy level to have a good night's rest. Just getting that quality of rest enhances our physical and our mental health. It boosts our mood, it improves our mental focus and our cognitive performance. So I don't know if you can think of times when you have been sleep deprived and you can't concentrate, or you feel groggy, you feel like you want to fall asleep. You definitely don't want to get out and go for a big walk when you're overtired. And so it limits that ability to get out and be physically active, which which we want to do, and that clarity of thinking and being productive during the day, and then having a good, happy mood or a good outlook on the day. Those kind of things diminish when we haven't had the proper amount of sleep. Now, interestingly, physical activity is impacted by lack of sleep, right? And being physically active on the other side of things helps us sleep better. So if we can be in a place where we have had a good night's sleep, we feel rested, we can get out and be physically active every day, it can help us sleep better. So very interesting perspective of how they impact each other and why it's so important to get the sleep so you can be physically active, which then in turn can also help you sleep better. So sometimes just knowing I'm going to have a better night's sleep is enough to help motivate me to really stay up on that physical activity because it is really important part of quality of sleep. Now, quality versus quantity, right? When it comes to sleep, they are both very important. You can have a long night's sleep and be in bed for 8, 9 hours, tossing and turning without a high quality of sleep. You're not going to feel rested in the morning. But it is just as important to have the quality as the quantity. So the quantity would be how many hours we spend sleeping. But the quality is how well did we sleep? Did we fall asleep quickly once we went to bed? Did we stay sound asleep throughout the night? Or did we toss and turn? When you have that quality of sleep, it's a restorative feeling. So it helps refresh us, it energizes us, and we wake up and we feel rested. That is the type of sleep that we want to get. And you may need to decide, first of all, what type of sleep are you getting? Are you getting to bed on time, but you're not really sleeping well? And if that is the case, what is it you can do to help yourself sleep better? Do you have a good physical activity routine that helps you stay active every day so that you can sleep better? Are you finding ways to cope with stress so that you can lay down and relax and go to sleep at night? Sometimes these things kind of build and escalate, and the poor sleep impacts our mood, and our mood impacts our sleep. So sometimes it's just important to really step back and see what it is that's causing us to not get a good quality of sleep, if that is what the problem is. Now, quantity also is important, right? We want to have the right amount of time of the quality sleep. So for teenagers, 8 to 10 hours a night is recommended. Adults, 7 to 9 hours. Over 64, 7 to 8 hours. Those are the type of sleeping habits we should be developing as adults. Are we getting the right amount of sleep and the right amount of time in? It's not enough to just get a few hours in whenever we can. Prioritizing how to get that sleep in is really important. And deciding what's getting in our way of getting that sleep. So there's some tips that I have to share with you in helping you get to sleep and stay asleep or getting better sleep. One of them is to establish a schedule that you follow every day, even on the weekends. Having a good sleep schedule of I go to sleep at this time, I get up at this time, that allows me my 7 to 9 hours. It tends to help us sleep better when we are asleep. And if at all possible, that is what I recommend you do, is developing this pattern of sleeping. It's also helpful to do something relaxing at bedtime. Now, for everyone, that is different. For one person, it might be reading a book, listening to quiet music, or maybe it's something hands-on, like doing a puzzle or a word search, or something where they can, kind of unwind and relax and do something they enjoy. Finding something you enjoy that can help you unwind at bedtime can be really important. Make sure your bedroom is dark, it's at a comfortable temperature, you have a comfortable bed, mattress, pillow, blankets, so that your environment you're trying to sleep in is conducive to a good night's sleep. Now, you want to avoid caffeine and alcohol right before bedtime. If you're going to drink caffeine, try to stop that by at least 6 hours before bedtime so that it has time to be out of your system so you can sleep. And then also limit those daytime naps after 3 p.m. so that you are ready to go to sleep when nighttime comes. Once you start that cycle of going to bed late, getting up, you're tired, you have a nap. Sometimes it creates a vicious cycle. So trying to not nap after 3 p.m. We talked about the importance of exercise. I can't stress that enough. Exercise has so many benefits, and one of them is improving sleep. So that's also really important. Avoiding heavy meals right before bedtime, having, high sugar drinks, things like that right before you're trying to go to sleep can impact that ability to fall asleep. If you have some real concerns or issues with sleeping or just never get a quality of sleep, I suggest you talk to a healthcare professional just to make sure there's no underlying causes for it, because you would hate to overlook something when it's something that could be treated. So be sure to consult a professional if you do find that there is something that's preventing you from ever getting good quality sleep. Now, if it's stress and things that are hard to cope with in your life, I would highly recommend you seek help from a mental health care professional so that you can work through some of that stress and be able to get sleep. Because as you can see from the things we've just talked about today, and I've only touched on a few things, I've only touched on just the basics of blood sugar management and weight. There's so many other things that sleep can impact. So make sure you're getting a good night's sleep. Have this be a priority. Figure out what it is that's not allowing you to sleep well if that is a problem that you have. If you're sleeping well, then you can now see the benefits that are already happening. But the goal would be to make sleep a priority so that you can have that improved overall wellness for long-term health. And once again, I thank you for joining me today, and I hope that this has helped give you some information that will help you to prioritize sleep and know why it would be important to fit into you and your own personal life.